Hey guys, welcome back to Embraced by Life. I'm your host Lisa, and I'm sharing with you my journey along with my husband Frank and our dog Buddy in our move to Spain and early retirement. So this video is going to focus specifically on Buddy and moving him over to Spain. And I did misspeak on our timeline. We moved to Spain on the 18th, not the 12th. Sorry, we were originally trying to aim for the 12th of November, but then we realized we needed more time because we had quite a few things that we had to get done before our move. So we actually moved on the 18th. So I'll give you more details on our timeline. So our stuff was picked up that was going to move to Spain on the 31st, which was a Friday. And so on the 1st of November, I called our vet and said, is it possible to drop off Buddy on Sunday the 2nd, because we were closing on Monday or Tuesday. It turned out to be Tuesday. We got our visas on the Monday the 3rd. So she said, yeah, no problem. They could keep him for a couple weeks. So I dropped him off on the 1st. And when I dropped him off, I made an appointment with her to talk through the USDA paperwork. And so we talked through timeline, and it was then that we realized the 12th probably wouldn't work. So we bumped our date to move to more like the 18th, which is what we landed on. And so she explained to me that she needed time to do an assessment. The good news was all of his shots were done properly. He had his USDA chip, so we didn't have to worry about any of that. But if you don't have all of your paperwork done right, and if the chip wasn't inserted before the rabies shots, you could be set back a whole month. So the good news was we met with her on the 1st when we dropped him off. She said, you're going to be good to go. They'll do the exam exactly 10 days before our flight. So I said to her, well, we'll figure out our flight. We'll aim for the 18th, and then we would call her later that week while he was in the pet hotel and let her know when we were actually going to go. So we dropped him off on Sunday the 1st. We picked up our visas on Monday the 2nd. On the 3rd, we closed on our house, and Frank and I were in a hotel that we had booked. So I then booked an Airbnb in New Jersey, close to where the vet's office was, because then I realized we need to pick up the paperwork before our flight, and it was easier if we would be closer to the vets before our flight. And so that's what we did. We booked an Airbnb close to my vet's office, which was about 40 minutes away from me and about an hour and a half to JFK Airport, which is where we flew out from. So I'll tell you a bit more about the paperwork here in a few minutes, but in terms of the actual flight, we had originally planned to use either K9 Jets or Bark Air. And so both K9 Jets and Bark Air, they are quite expensive, but I thought, this would be a one-time cost that we'd have to factor into moving. It is quite expensive, but I was afraid to put Buddy in cargo, honestly. I wanted to do best case scenario. But all these flights were booked. I did not want to book it in advance because we had no clue if and when we would fly, and these are not refundable flights. So once I realized that, it's not even an option to do K9 Jets or Bark Air, he's got to go in cargo, I just dealt with that situation. And I knew this kind of early on. I think by the time I came back from visiting my family, I just knew in my heart there was no way I'd get on a Bark Air or K9 Jets flight, even if I wanted to. So I bought a crate for Buddy. Now he was crate trained in a large metal crate, and he slept in that every night and he loved it. But what I did was I bought a carrier crate, and I bought one that was just big enough. I'll be honest with you, I wish it was bigger, but the problem was the weight of the crates. If I went a size bigger, it would have been too heavy. And the airlines have limits on weight for cargo. And for that matter, most American Airlines companies won't fly pets and cargo anymore because they don't have the capability of doing it right and well. So I had two choices, either Iberia Air or Air Europa. And Iberia Air had limitations on the weight for the crate and the dog. Air Europa's limitation on the weight was greater, so it's 110 pounds total for the dog and the crate. And our dog's 90 pounds, and the crate was 22 and a half pounds. So we were literally just at or above, a bit over the weight limit for Air Europa. But that was our only choice. So what we ended up doing was I had kind of crate trained Buddy in this new crate for 3 weeks before we closed, after I got back from visiting my family. And I just knew if we get the visas, he's gonna have to go in that crate. It'll just be for one day. But I got him used to it. He did not like it, but we just sucked it up. And you know, I didn't force him to go in it. He would go in it at night for just maybe 3 or 4 hours. He didn't want to go to bed until like 3 in the morning, and then he would go in his crate for like 3 or 4 hours and get up. But it was what it was. I didn't push it, you know. We had too much going on at that point. I figured at least he would get in it, and it would be a tough day of his life and our lives. But we had the crate trained him, so that was ready. So we ended up booking our flights with Air Europa. And so when I dropped him off at the vet's, we didn't know exactly when we were flying out, but then we got our flights booked. And so I called the vet and said, we're going to fly out on the 18th. And she said, that's great. It gives you plenty of time. I'll do his vet appointment for the USDA paperwork on the 9th. So while he was there in the pet hotel, she did his consultation and did all the paperwork and his official you know, vet visit for the USDA paperwork. And she assured me that we would get it in time for the flight. And I've heard horror stories about people getting their paperwork literally the morning of the flight. The paperwork was to arrive at her office, so we had our Airbnb booked close to where her vet's office was. And so while we were off doing all this other stuff, which I'll talk about in a whole separate video of what Frank and I did for those couple weeks, gearing up to move to Spain while Buddy was in the pet hotel, you know, we really were anxious if we were going to get his paperwork on time. And I was nervous about, obviously, him in the crate. But we just, you know, had faith and said this will all work out. So she actually put everything in, and we picked him up on the 14th, Friday. Now, we didn't fly out until the 18th, so he stayed in the Airbnb with us while we were waiting for our flight and waiting for his paperwork. And when I picked him up, she said, your papers are here. So on the 14th, I had the papers for his flight on the 18th, which is incredible. I mean, that never happens. So it all aligned. It all worked out for us. But she submitted the paperwork on the 9th for our flight on the 18th, which is you can't do it any more than 10 days ahead. And she did it exactly 10 days ahead. And we got the papers on the 14th. I was shocked. And that's the reason we stayed near her office at the Airbnb before our flight, was in case I had to pick it up the morning of. So we had the papers. But what we didn't have was Buddy at the weight that he needed to be with him in the crate. So I was freaking out for about 4 days about Buddy's weight and the combined weight of him in the crate, because when I picked him up, he weighed about 89.5 pounds. So he lost a couple pounds while he was boarding, which is pretty typical. But he was literally at the cusp of the max weight. So I cut back just a tiny little bit on his food. I think he ended up losing maybe another half a pound between the time that I picked him up and the time that we flew out. I literally took him to a vet's office and weighed him the morning of our flight because I was worried that they would deny us boarding on his flight. But it worked out. We got to the Air Europa gate, and he was not in the crate at the time. He's 90 pounds, so he was just hanging out at the airport with us. And they looked at him and they thought he was so cute, and we had his crate sitting there on the baggage claim rolling thing. Don't know what you call that, but yeah, we had his crate sitting with the baggage. And they said, we'll just, you know, fill out all these forms and come back in a half an hour, and then we'll put him in the crate, and then he'll go through security. So I was freaking out thinking, when are they going to weigh him? When are they going to weigh his crate and weigh him? And is he going to be over the 110 pounds? I had a bed in there and blankets and toys, which would put us over the weight. They didn't weigh him. They didn't weigh him. They didn't weigh the crate. They were so friendly. This is Air Europa at JFK. They were so friendly, and just all they cared about was that he had water and that we were going to be okay. And the pilots came up to us as we were checking him in, and said, is he on our flight? And I said, yes, and it's his first flight. And I was so nervous. I was freaking out. And they said, don't worry. We have temperature control. He'll be fine. We'll take good care of him. And so I was so relieved. Now, we did put a tracker on his collar so that we knew where he was in the airport. And so a half hour later, we came back. We put him into the crate. He did not want to go in it. He was crying. I felt terrible. But then he settled down. And they took him away. And we went through security. And we got on our plane. And we did buy business class seats. We wanted a comfortable flight, but we also wanted to be the first off the plane to get through customs and immigration. And we also wanted to be the first at baggage claim to get our dog. So we did pay for that upgrade. It was well worth it. We bought our flights literally like 2 weeks before we left, and we got really good prices. So thank heavens. But it was worth it to get the business class because we were first off the plane. We were first at customs and immigration. We got our stamp and our passports. I'll do a whole nother video for those of you with your NLV visas, how that whole process works. But we got all that done. And we literally got to the baggage claim area and the oversized baggage area as he was coming out. So we were the first there. We got him out. We cut off the tie wraps immediately. He got out and he was so relieved and looking at me and happy. And he's never been happier here. He is so happy. I'll show you a video of Buddy here in Spain. A separate one on him in Spain, but it worked out. It was so stressful. You know, this is just one little piece of all the things that we've been doing, but it worked out, and there was a lot to getting Buddy here. But he made it, and he loves it here. And you know, I'll talk to you all about what Frank and I were doing for a week and a half, 2 weeks, while Buddy was at the pet hotel getting himself organized for his flight, because there was a lot that we had to do. We actually had to fly to Florida and change our residency. So we've been busy since we sold our home. But I'll do another video on that. So hopefully that gives you some insight on moving our dog Buddy, our precious dog Buddy, to Spain, which was just, for us, it was really stressful. But yeah, it worked out with a lot of faith and just a lot of patience. It all came together. So, all right, I will do more videos. Appreciate you, you know, going through this journey with us, and we'll talk to you soon. Okay, bye.